So how's it going, guys? This is Rio Murata, photographer based in Tokyo. So this came out spontaneously. Actually, I was basically browsing through Instagram as usual, and there has been a trend, I guess in North America, started really early, but Kodak recently released a sort of like a product or a blind box type of product called the Kodak Charmera. I don't know if the pronunciation is correct, but it is basically a toy camera, which you do not know until you unbox the sort of like the product itself. And as usual, you guys probably know products gets released in North America and I guess in Europe ASAP, then in Japan. And I did not know if any shop had it in store, but recently when I was like browsing through Instagram, the sort of like the film lab that I frequently drop my sort of like film to get it processed, which is Hirose Lab actually, Photo Lab in Shimokitazawa, had it in stock. I saw it on their reel, and I basically shot a DM saying that if they had it in stock, and they said that they did. So I basically paid the full price and sort of like purchased it from them. And I thought it'd be nice to make a sort of like an overview type of video of this product for you guys, more like talking about the characteristics of it. And yeah, so after getting my sort of like product, which I already unboxed it, I'll stick in a BTS for you guys. A blind box, meaning that you do not know until you unbox it. The Kodak Charmera comes in 6 flavors, in addition to that 1 secret one. So it's like 1 out of 7 possibilities of getting a specific type of design. If you look at the side of the box, there's like 6 colorways and 1 secret, which you guys probably, if you Google it, you'll find out that the secret one is a skeleton type of design, which you can basically see through. I think that was a trend back in the 90s or 2000s. When I actually lived in the United States, I remember using an iMac, one of those skeleton colors one, during my elementary school years. And I guess in early 2000s, there were Game Boy Advances where the components you can basically see through. There were a trend going on where there was this sort of like design trend that it was skeleton, and I guess it was sort of like a revival of that. But basically, going back onto topic, after I unboxed it, I found out that I got the neutral gray version. I don't know if it's in focus, but toy camera actually, which kind of matches my characteristics of being a bland person. Everywhere I go, I get like gray stuff, actually, random like handkerchief that I recently received from Standard Products, but I do not know. But I was really intriguing that I got the gray version. And the product itself is super straightforward. This is a sort of like a digital camera, which you basically charge via USB-C, which is, I'm thankful because all my devices are USB-C. You basically you can charge it from the AC, or in my case, I mostly charge everything from my mobile battery, which is CIO. You just plug it in, and after like a couple of like 30 minutes to 1 hour or so, you can basically fully charge this, and you can basically operate it from there. In addition to that, because it's a digital camera, you have to like keep in mind that it uses a memory card instead of like film stocks, unfortunately. It uses a micro SD cards, which you can stick either from 16 gigabytes to 128 gigabytes, which you don't really need. But because I shoot footage most of the time, I had a 64 gigabyte SanDisk card at my disposal, so I basically stuck that in here. And I found out that I can take roughly 10,000 photos of this because the data size isn't that big. If you stick in the 16 gigabytes, you can get roughly 5,000 photos of just shooting with this. But before you like shoot 5,000 photos, the battery will probably die beforehand. So yeah. And the camera itself, the front side, there's a lens actually. And on the top side, there's an on and off button. And the shutter button at the top, I'll stick in a BTS for you guys. And it says Kodak's keychain camera at the top actually. On the back side actually, there's an LCD screen, sort of like a screen where you can basically preview the image, and also you can basically see the sort of like, you can basically compose the shot actually. I just realized after using it for a couple of days or so that there is this sort of like time lag when you like move the camera around, so you have to be like really patient when you're like shooting around with it. And when you basically boot it up, I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but on the left side it says it's what mode it's in. It's in like photo mode, and on the right side it says EN, I guess that means English, and below that there's a memory card which is already in there. So if you don't have a memory card in here, it basically tells that you can't shoot photo because there's nothing to record on. And below that, I think it's like super hard to see. there's a sort of like a battery indicator, so it kind of tells you like how much battery is being used, if it's like fully charged or not. So you can basically see beforehand that if your battery is going to die, you can basically charge it when you're like during going on a trip or something like that. In addition to looking at the back side, there's like 3 buttons: a preview button, a selection button, which you can toggle up and down actually. If you go into the photo mode, and when you sort of like toggle it up, you go into sort of like a mode where you can change the filter of the camera. If you look at the back of the sort of like the box itself, it comes in presets of 7 photo filters and 4 photo frames, which I'm not hyped on, unfortunately, but that exists. And there's also, within the 7 photo filters, there's like cold tone, warm tone, a pixel filter, yellow, red, blue, gray, and also black and white. So if you like to shoot in black and white, you can actually choose that. But I realized that you had to keep on sort of like toggling it to that specific sort of like filter, which takes a couple of seconds or so. So, I mean, I just shoot it in the default color mode. I just don't want to use the filter mode because it's kind of hectic to just browse through it. So yeah, once you kind of sort of like boot it up, pressing the sort of like on and off button, you come to a screen where, I don't know if you guys can see it, but you can select 3 modes, which is, one is the photo mode, which it takes photos, and the second mode is movie actually, which you can only shoot in 30 FPS, which will shock cinematographers in LA and Hollywood actually. You can't choose 24 FPS, unfortunately. This only shoots in 30 FPS. And also the last setting is sort of like a setting area button where you can basically toggle the dates actually. So you have to sort of like select the current date as of now to get sort of like a date stamp actually. So yeah, that exists. And one area to note about the photo mode in the Kodak Charmera is when you actually press the shutter, there's actually an LED that sort of like blinks. And I'm not a fan of flash photography. It's not like a flash, it's more like an LED, so it just illuminates slightly. So I'm not a fan of this. So I basically cover my sort of like middle finger, which isn't the right way of saying it, and basically press the sort of like the shutter like here. So I basically can prevent it from sort of like including that sort of like light into my image. But because sort of like the what you call the megapixels of this camera isn't that significant, it's like 1.6 megapixels, you get a super grainy sort of like really out of focus type of image, so not highly sort of like great in that sense. So it doesn't make that much of a difference even if you like cover it or not cover it, unfortunately. But yeah, I wish there was a button which I can sort of like turn it off. It's kind of nonsense, unfortunately. And what's also really neat about the Kodak Charmera is that there's actually a viewfinder at the top left corner, sort of like a rangefinder, but although it's like really clear, I can basically see a lot actually. It's like really clean actually. So it's usable. However, in reality wise, the what you call the sensor itself, or the sort of like the lens itself, the focal distance of that and the viewfinder coverage is completely different. The viewfinder looks like it's like a 35 to maybe 40 mil lens, somewhere around there. So unfortunately you can't use the viewfinder, although it looks really nice. But yeah, that's another area to like mention. And I guess another area where no one mentioned in any kind of reels or any kind of like short video is that it makes this sort of like really nice retro sound when it's like booting up. So I don't know if you guys can hear it. It's like opening up a Pokedex or something. And when you actually change the sort of like the settings, it makes a sort of like a small like sound. So you're doing something manually, and when you sort of select it, and also the shutter sound has a really old-fashioned, or I don't know, analog type of taste to it. So that's actually nice. And because this is sort of like a blind box, meaning that blind boxes products typically come in a keychain actually, you can basically put this on a bag or something like that, and you can basically shoot whenever you want. But I realized after using it a little bit of of time actually when I was around in Shinjuku. I was just taking some sample photos for you guys. The battery actually gets depleted pretty fast in a sense that right now shooting this video actually I'm basically just toggling around. I just lost one battery indicator. There's like 3 batteries, sort of like indications. When 1/3 is gone, 1/3 disappears, and when it goes into the red zone, you had to charge it actually. So the battery life isn't great. And when I was actually shooting with this, I was sort of like shooting this, sort of like holding it like this on my right hand, sort of like shooting it, I guess, street style. So basically the LCD at the back is always turned on, and I was basically snapping around. But because this LCD screen sort of like eats away the battery really fast actually, after like about 30 minutes or so, I kind of used up almost half of the battery without knowing. So that's sort of like one of the pitfalls, the downfalls of all these really small toy cameras, is that the battery life isn't the best, so you had to like charge it up frequently. And because it takes a while to sort of like boot up actually, I was basically shooting this like non-stop actually, so I did not want to like continuously like turn it on, turn it off, turn it off, you know, turn it off, turn it off and stuff like that. If you have sort of like a mirrorless camera or any kind of film camera, I mean, it doesn't eat away that much battery when you do that. But this one, on the other hand, because it takes a couple of like seconds to boot up, I just had it turned on and it kind of eats away the battery pretty quickly. So yeah, that's like one of the downfalls that I've realized after using it for just a couple of days or so. And that's basically it, sort of like covering about the sort of like the Kodak Charmera. Did I actually forget that when you actually unbox this, it comes with one trading card and also of sort of like the product itself, exact same sort of like design actually, and also a sort of like a pamphlet, a retro looking pamphlet, which sort of like describes the sort of like, I think back in the days a lot of like companies like included these sort of like pamphlets of the product itself, like to sort of like notify, sort of like advertise that product and sort of like explain what it is actually. So yeah, it's like a product inspired in the 1980s if I'm right. And I kind of wish I got the sort of like the type 1, which was sort of like the, it looks like the default one, the top left one actually. So because that one looks as if it's the iconic one inspired by the Kodak Fling from the 1980s. But yeah, I got the neutral gray, which my life is really bland right now. So yeah, that's basically it. Talking about the Kodak Charmera. And oh yeah, and last but not least, in terms of price actually, this is actually really interesting because if you look at the Kodak's official website, it says $29.99 USD if you, I guess, purchase it on their official website. But distributors in North America seems to be selling it for around $34.99 to $39 USD. Because I live in Tokyo, Japan, the price is a little bit weird in a sense because the Forex exchange market right now, dollars is much more powerful than yen, so you have to pay extra with yen in order to like purchase dollar products. In Japan specifically, depending on the distributors or labs or I guess shops, it ranges from 5,000 yen to 7,000 yen from what I hear from the community of the film arena in Japan actually. So, well, depending on the sort of like the shop, which basically buys a lot of these like products, if they buy a lot, the price will be closer to 5,000 yen. However, because I sort of like send my films to a really relatively small lab actually, they weren't able to get a lot of these. So the price was a little bit higher. I actually had to pay roughly 7,000 yen. So that was quite pricey in a sense, but you had to take into account that that money gets, you know, used to pay for the bills and also the salary of the employees who work there. So it's sort of like in my case, sort of like a donation to the lab for thanking me to do my sort of like processing of my sort of like films, because they do a really great job. And at the same time, I was thankful for getting one of these because it was actually really hard to find one in Tokyo, Japan. But as time rolls on, there will be more and more like copies of these being sold in many stores. So don't be too rushed to purchase this because eventually you'll probably find one if you want one. So yeah, that's basically it on my coverage of talking about the Kodak Charmera. If you have any questions or if you have any inquiries, I'm happy to reply. And yeah, That was actually a really random, spontaneous sort of like event. I never knew that I would be able to get one of these. I thought it would take maybe 6 months down the road to like at least find one. But thankfully, my lab was able to get one for me. So yeah, thanks to Hirose Photo Labs for sort of like getting me Kodak Charmera. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, hopefully I'll stick this onto my bag and just shoot away. Yeah, see what I can get from this. And I'm kind of curious about the footage actually, because the footage of in terms of video looks sort of like a daddy camera, like a camcorder back in the days in the 80s, 90s, you know. So the quality is not good, but it looks really interesting in a sense. So yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace out.